David Goldwich has a daunting task ahead of him. The objective of his speech is to talk about his mentoring experience. Unfortunately, he has no mentoring experience. I wonder how he's going to pull this off. Let's wish him luck. David Goldwich.
Thank you, Nick. Good evening, fellow Toastmasters and guests. In the ancient Greek classic, the Odyssey, Homer tells the story of Odysseus, king of Ithaca, who went off to lead his men into battle in the Trojan War. Before he left, he asked his good friend to oversee the affairs of his household, because he was a king after all and he had a palace, and also to guide his son Telemachus during his absence. He didn't know it at the time, but he would be gone for 10 years. And the travel back was full of adventures, trials, and tribulations, but that's a story for another time. Odysseus' friend's name was Mentor, and that's where we get the term mentor, meaning somebody who guides and helps you develop, usually in the capacity of employment. How does one get a mentor? In some organizations, one is formally assigned to you, sort of like a buddy system. Sometimes a senior colleague will take an interest in a junior one. They see something, they believe in them, they want them to succeed, and so they take him or her under their wing. And sometimes you can just approach somebody more senior and ask, would you be interested in mentoring me? Unfortunately, I worked for very small firms for most of my early career, and I never really had a mentor, but I still learned a lot along the way. My first job was with a very small 6-man zoning law firm. My boss, Tom, spoke very cryptically. Zoning operates in the shadows, and there's a fine line between influence and bribery. A wily old practitioner like Tom knew better than to say too much, so everything he said was sort of a puzzle. I learned that at our very first meeting. During my job interview, I thought I did pretty well, but the interview ended abruptly. Tom got a call, and he said, "I have to take this. Goodbye." I walked out, my head spinning, wondering, what the heck just happened? Do I have the job? Should I call them? Should I ask somebody? I might feel very stupid. As I walked out, I thought I might be able to tease the answer out of his secretary, Denise. During the course of scheduling and rescheduling yet again this interview, I learned that Denise ran this guy's life, both personally and professionally. As I passed her desk, I said, "So, Denise, where do we go from here?" She said, "You can come in Monday. This will be your parking space. We'll get you a key." And I thought, yes, I got the job. I left the firm under similarly ambiguous circumstances. I lawyered along happily for a couple of years, and then a decision was handed down from the appellate court that totally transformed the way zoning law could be practiced. This decision was not favorable for us. Tom said to me, "David, you need to think about where you're going to go from here." I thought, what the heck just happened? Did I just get fired? It sure sounds like it, but I'm not sure. It's definitely a hint, though. I better start looking for a job. So I found a job at a commercial litigation firm. When I told Tom I was leaving, he said, "David, you didn't have to leave the firm. What I meant was you need to think about what area you would like to specialize in." I thought, this is a heck of a thing to tell me now, Tom, as I'm out the door, already committed. From Tom, I learned the importance of clear communication. Lawyers are meticulous about the placement of every comma in a written document, but when they talk, it's not always that clear. At the litigation firm, my boss was an old guy named Dick, who was always very busy. Whenever I would go into his office to ask a question, he would say, "David, I'm really busy. Just deal with it. Figure it out yourself." I didn't feel a lot of support over there. Late one afternoon, Dick called me into his office. "David, come in here. Hurry up." I dashed down the hall to his office, wondering, what's the emergency? Maybe he's got a really important case for me. Maybe this is my chance to shine. I barged through the door, and I saw him standing out the window. "You see that bird over there? It's a yellow-crested beetle muncher. It subsists entirely on a diet of one species of rare beetle. You don't usually see them this early in the season." And he's going on and on about this stupid bird, and you don't have time to answer my questions? What I learned from Dick was people always have time for things that interest them. My next job took me halfway around the world to Singapore. I was a visiting lecturer at a college, and this school had a formal mentoring program. Finally, I would be assigned an actual mentor. You're probably thinking, first was Tom, then Dick. This one's name must be Harry. You'd be wrong. I can tell you there are very few Harrys in Asia. Her name was Professor Ong, and while she did do a pretty good job of helping me navigate the intricacies and politics of a large academic institution, I don't really feel that I was holistically developed over there. Probably because I was only a visiting lecturer with a 2-year contract. Had I been a permanent lecturer, doesn't that sound horrible? Permanent lecturer? They might have been willing to invest a little bit more in me. What I learned from Professor Ong was beware of labels. Just because something is called something, like mentor, doesn't mean that's really what it was. After I left the firm, or the school, I reached out to one of the trainers. Like all civil servants in Singapore, teachers have to go through a lot of training. And one of the trainers was a distinguished older gentleman with a lot of experience named Bob. Bob had more substance, more gravitas than any of the other trainers. So I reached out to him and we started working together. Pretty soon I realized Bob's training materials actually were not very good. Almost every program he had was just mixing and matching the same basic communications modules. His idea of a PowerPoint slide was taking a picture of a textbook page and flashing it on the wall. Whatever space wasn't filled with fine print that you could barely read was cluttered with silly, irrelevant images. You remember those paperclip figures with the hands and face? Bob was very old, though, and very overweight, and he smoked 3 packs a day. So it didn't come as a big surprise when he passed away suddenly, leaving me with a mountain of substandard training materials. I thought I might be able to salvage them, clean them up a bit. But pretty soon I realized it was hopeless. I would have to start from scratch and develop my own content. What I learned from Bob was, just because something works well for somebody else doesn't mean it's going to work for you. You need to take your own approach and do things your way. I didn't have to work with Bob to learn that. I could have learned that from Frank Sinatra. Jerry Garcia, the late great leader of the Grateful Dead, and the first man in history to have a flavor of ice cream named after him, said, "What a long, strange trip it's been." I'm sure Odysseus would agree with that statement. After fighting in the Trojan War for 10 years, it took him another 10 years full of twists and turns before he returned to his beloved Ithaca. I'm sure he would describe his life as a long, strange trip. As you go through your own journey, With or without a mentor, life will offer you lessons. It's up to you to decide whether or not you learn from them. Thank you. Toastmaster of the evening.